Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the intricacies of military history's most pivotal battles. Today, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating and complex conflicts of the 19th century, the Battle of Metz, fought in 1870 between French and German forces. This battle was a crucible of modern warfare, showcasing innovative tactics, cutting-edge technology, and the unyielding resolve of soldiers on both sides. The late summer of 1870 found Europe in turmoil, with the Franco-Prussian War raging across the continent. The conflict had begun in July, sparked by a series of diplomatic crises and military provocations that ultimately led to the declaration of war by France against Prussia. At the helm of the French army was Marshal François-Achille Bazaine, a seasoned commander with a reputation for bravery and tactical acumen. His counterpart, Helmuth von Moltke, was the chief of staff of the Prussian army, known for his meticulous planning and strategic genius. In the months leading up to the Battle of Metz, both armies had been engaged in a series of skirmishes and battles across northeastern France. The French army, despite being well-equipped and highly motivated, found itself on the back foot, struggling to contain the relentless advance of the Prussian forces. One of the key factors contributing to this situation was the disparity in military doctrine between the two armies. The French, still adhering to the traditional Napoleonic tactics that had served them so well in the past, emphasized the importance of élan and offensive spirit. In contrast, the Prussians had adopted a more modern approach, emphasizing the use of artillery, fortifications, and coordinated maneuvers to outmaneuver their opponents. As the summer wore on, Marshal Bazaine's army found itself increasingly isolated and outnumbered. The Prussian forces, having won a series of decisive victories at Wissembourg, Spicheren, and Mars-la-Tour, had effectively encircled the city of Metz, cutting off the French lines of communication and supply. It was against this backdrop that Bazaine made the fateful decision to concentrate his army within the fortified city, hoping to wear down the Prussian besiegers through a combination of defensive tactics and timely counterattacks. The city of Metz, with its imposing fortifications and strategic location, would become the focal point of a desperate struggle for survival. In the weeks preceding the Battle of Metz, both armies engaged in a series of probing attacks and reconnaissance missions, each seeking to gauge the strength and intentions of their opponent. The French, aware of their precarious situation, worked tirelessly to reinforce their defenses, constructing new fortifications and deploying their artillery in strategic locations throughout the city. Meanwhile, the Prussians, driven by the relentless momentum of their advance, continued to apply pressure on the French lines, seeking to exploit any weakness or vulnerability that might arise. As tensions escalated, the atmosphere within the besieged city grew increasingly tense. Civilians, caught in the midst of the conflict, struggled to survive amidst the chaos and destruction. Food and water were scarce, and the constant bombardment by Prussian artillery had reduced many buildings to rubble. Despite these challenges, the French soldiers remained resolute, buoyed by their determination to defend their city and their nation against the invading forces. As the days turned into weeks, the siege of Metz became increasingly dire for the French army. The Prussians, under the command of General von Moltke, continued to tighten their grip on the city, cutting off all avenues of escape and resupply. Marshal Bazaine, determined to hold out as long as possible, ordered his troops to construct a series of fortified positions along the outskirts of the city, hoping to stem the tide of the Prussian advance. One of the most significant events of the Battle of Metz occurred on August 31, 1870, when a large French force attempted to break through the Prussian lines and escape the city. The sortie, led by General Coffiniers, consisted of over 10,000 troops and was aimed at the weak point in the Prussian line near the village of Neusseville. However, the Prussians were well prepared for the attack and had concentrated a large force of artillery and infantry in the area. As the French troops advanced, they were met with a hail of gunfire from the Prussian positions, causing heavy casualties and disrupting their formation. Despite this, the French soldiers fought bravely, managing to break through the first line of Prussian defenses. However, they were ultimately unable to overcome the second line, and the attack stalled. The failure of the sortie had devastating consequences for the French army. Not only did it result in significant losses, but it also led to a further tightening of the Prussian siege lines, making it even more difficult for the French to receive supplies or reinforcements. As one French officer later recalled, The siege of Metz was like being trapped in a vice, with the Prussians slowly closing in on us from all sides. As September wore on, the situation within the city grew increasingly desperate. Food and water were scarce, and disease began to spread rapidly among the troops. Marshal Bazaine, aware that his army was on the brink of collapse, made a series of desperate attempts to negotiate a surrender with the Prussians. However, General von Moltke remained resolute, refusing to offer any terms that would allow the French army to escape or maintain its honor. On September 7, 1870, the Prussians launched a major assault on the French positions near the village of Saint-Privat, hoping to break through the defenses and capture the city. The attack was fierce and intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. However, the French troops ultimately managed to hold their ground, repelling the Prussian assault and inflicting significant losses. The battle at Saint-Privat marked a turning point in the siege of Metz. Although the French army had suffered heavily, it had also demonstrated its determination and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. As Marshal Bazaine later wrote, "The defense of Metz was a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the French soldier who fought against impossible odds to defend his city and his nation." Despite this, the outcome of the battle was all but certain. The Prussians continued to tighten their siege lines, slowly strangling the life out of the city. On October 27, 1870, Marshal Bazaine finally surrendered his army, marking the end of the Battle of Metz. As the French troops marched out of the city, they were met with a mixture of relief and despair, knowing that their defeat would have far-reaching consequences for France and the future of Europe. As the French troops marched out of Metz on October 27, 1870, they were met with a mixture of relief and despair, knowing that their defeat would have far-reaching consequences for France and the future of Europe. The surrender marked the end of the Battle of Metz, one of the most significant battles of the Franco-Prussian War. Marshal Bazaine's decision to surrender was largely due to the dire circumstances his army faced, with food and water scarce, disease rampant, and morale at an all-time low. The aftermath of the battle saw the Prussians continue their advance on Paris, which eventually led to the siege of the city. The French government, now led by General Louis-Jules Trochu, attempted to defend the city, but ultimately it fell to the Prussians in January 1871. The Franco-Prussian War officially ended with the signing of the Treaty of Frankfurt on May 10, 1871, which imposed harsh terms on France, including a significant loss of territory and a massive indemnity. The Battle of Metz had a lasting impact on European history, marking a significant shift in the balance of power. The Prussian victory led to the unification of Germany under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck, while France was left to pick up the pieces and rebuild. As one historian noted, the Battle of Metz was a watershed moment in modern European history, marking the end of French dominance and the rise of German power. Today, the Battle of Metz is remembered as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the French soldiers who fought against overwhelming odds. The battle is commemorated by a museum in Metz, which houses artifacts and exhibits detailing the events leading up to and during the battle. Visitors can also see the fortified positions and trenches that were used by both the French and Prussian armies. The battle marked a turning point in European history, shaping the course of politics, diplomacy, and warfare for generations to come. As Marshal Bazaine himself said, "The defense of Metz was a glorious page in the history of France, one that will be remembered for centuries to come." In conclusion, the Battle of Metz was a pivotal moment in modern European history, one that had far-reaching consequences for France, Germany, and the world. Its legacy can still be seen today in the museums, memorials, and historical accounts that commemorate the bravery and sacrifice of the soldiers who fought there. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.